Welcome to the Popish Plot. I'm Nate.
I'm Jessica.
And I'm Mike.
And today we're here with another installment of our series on Catholic scientists.
Showing that there is, in fact, no conflict between faith and reason.
That's great.
And I heard this one involves dinosaurs.
It does.
It's awesome.
So today we are talking about Blessed Nicolas Steno.
Ooh, so he's, extra Catholic-y because he's on the path to sainthood, too.
Indeed.
We could, have, two things at once if you ever get sainted.
There you go.
Ooh.
So, tell us about him, besides that he had something with dinosaurs, which is cool.
Yeah. So, Blessed Nicolas was actually born Niels Steensen in Denmark. In Copenhagen in the year of our Lord, 1638.
It looks like January 1st, so he's a New Year baby.
Not really.
Or are they just guessing?
No. He was born on New Year's Day according to the Julian calendar. But by this point, the Gregorian reforms had already been instituted in the Catholic countries, but the Protestants were still resisting.
So he was actually like a week and a half later.
So he was actually born on what we would call January 11th.
Well, it's still a one.
Absolutely. It's two ones. It's twice as good.
One.
He was born a Lutheran in the Church of Denmark, the son of a goldsmith. He had a mysterious illness when he was 3, and so he was fairly isolated for his entire childhood. This kind of kept him sort of quarantined away from other people.
Okay.
Are you sure it's not that they were Danish, and from what I read of their mysteries and stuff, that's the type of stuff that they're always having happen?
Well, it could just be that's the polite way of saying they're Danish.
He's mystery.
So he was the son of a goldsmith. His father died, and then his mother married another goldsmith. There's a lot
Clearly she had a type.
There's a lot of continuity there, probably in the community.
I mean, she has all the goldsmithing tools. Clearly, that's going to attract you.
Indeed. She's already got the kit. And so he left home at age 19 to go off to the University of Copenhagen, so just moving across town. And he was on the move for basically the rest of his life. So he made his way to France, where René Descartes was a general-purpose philosopher, and he had the idea that tears came from the brain. And Blessed Nicolas thought, well, that's probably not right. And he eventually made his way...
My brain juices.
You do have brain juices, but it's not the tears.
I know, but I'm just saying that's why you need to be conserving them whenever you cry. You need to try to not cry.
I mean, people listen to him go on and on about how he's not sure if that person is there or this chair he's sitting in is there because he can't know if it's thinking, and they started crying, and they're like, clearly his brain is thinking out.
By 1666, he was appointed a professor of anatomy at the University of Padua. So he'd wandered all the way down to Italy.
Okay.
And then shortly thereafter, he was made the in-house physician to Ferdinando de' Medici II, the Grand Duke of Tuscany.
Yeah,
that sounds like an important person, if only because of his last name.
It's
Indeed.
good work if
Indeed.
you can get it.
Indeed. By this point, things had calmed down considerably for the Medicis, so they were no longer being overthrown in Florence and whatnot. Now, this is where his huge scientific contributions kick in. The Catholicism took a little longer. So, this guy's got a big brain, and he's learned from everybody. He knows everyone. Just a who's who of the 17th century. And he's known especially for professor of anatomy. He loves digging around inside stuff, and people bring him things. So, he's known for several foundational discoveries. He's the one who discovered the Steenson's duct, also known as the Parotid Duct.
Okay.
That sounds like body parts.
That sounds like a thing.
It is. So, do you enjoy swallowing?
I do.
I mean,
I
don't say
it's
enjoy
required.
it,
I'm not
but
against it.
if I couldn't, there'd be problems.
It's required for eating, and I enjoy eating.
Especially the living part.
Yeah.
So saliva is an important part of that whole process.
Okay.
It lubricates the work. The Steenson's duct, or parotid duct, is what takes saliva from the parotid gland into your mouth.
Oh, okay.
He's the one who found the duct.
Gotcha.
And
That must have been tricky.
Well,
I imagine they're pretty tiny things.
It probably is. Fortunately, he's not digging around on anyone living.
I've never seen like a saliva opening in my mouth when looking in the mirror or anything.
Well, and that's why it wasn't until the 1660s that this was discovered.
Okay.
Even though it had always been there in all of human history.
Fair enough.
Also, he was doing some work on cows, dissecting their hearts, and he's the first one to demonstrate that the heart is just a muscle. Whereas there was a belief going all the way back to Galen in ancient times, but also defended by Descartes, that the heart was somehow not just the metaphorical heart, the seat of a reason or emotion, but it was actually a center of warmth. So it was the reason why we were warm-blooded. Whereas Steenson was able to prove, no, it's just a muscle that pumps the blood. It's a very, very important muscle. It's a muscle we can't live without, but it's just a giant muscle.
Well, I mean, it probably does generate some amount of warmth.
Sure, from all that movement.
As in order for it to move like that, it has to go and metabolize things, and that activity of metabolism generates heat.
Well, it's not really doing the metabolizing.
And it's going to be a minute amount.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm pretty sure it's not why we're warm-blooded, because things like lizards have hearts too that do pretty much the same thing.
No, we clearly have to have more involved.
Yeah, we don't want to put the cart before the horse. And
what about Descartes?
No. Can you put him before
does
Descartes?
the cart even exist? Does the cart think? No, therefore it is the... And he also discovered lateral lines in fish. This is a little set of organs they have running in a line along their sides that helps them detect changes in water pressure and vibrations. It's actually crucial to how fish are able to school together and move as groups.
Yes.
Now,
all right, we got fish, but no dinosaurs.
We're getting there. So, because he was known as an anatomy dude, he's cutting all kinds of stuff. At one point, a giant shark was caught and brought to Duke Ferdinando.
Okay.
And he's like, hey, here, you, dig around in this. So, sure. So he starts digging around into this giant shark. And he's picking out the teeth. And he's like, this looks a lot like many fossils I've seen. Now, at the time, they were aware of fossils. They had found many of them. But the prominent idea was that the fossils had formed there. So if you had a rock that looked a lot like a shark tooth, it had formed that way in the rock. Now we know that, no, those are shark's teeth that have become petrified, that have undergone a chemical change to be stone-like. But at the time, they were thought to be a natural formation that occurred in the soil.
Well, I mean, they weren't that far, if not still within the era where people somewhat thought that, say, rabbits just happened to happen in springtime and stuff from the ground. So.
Yep. And, I mean, there are still... Unfortunately, there are still Christian fundamentalists who believe that, the fossils aren't fossils, they're just kind of natural formations in the earth. Now, in this, he was building on the earlier work of Fabio Colonna, whose name is just fun to say.
It is.
Fabio.
It sounds like he should be an Italian, movie star who also makes, perfumes.
Mm-hmm. I like it. I like it a lot. But, Colonna just had more of the theory. Steenson is providing the evidence of, no, look, here's the teeth. Here's a fossil. They're clearly the same thing. And he did a lot of the theorizing. They weren't yet to the point of really doing empirical science, but he was doing a lot of theorizing of how these things could undergo the chemical change to then become fossilized. Dinosaurs. Now,
I have the smallest dinosaurs. I should have brought one of my bigger dinosaurs.
Indeed. Well, once we have our first official paleontologist saint, then we'll break out the real dinosaurs. Now, digging around in the dirt is something he really enjoyed, and his theories still form the foundational basis of stratigraphy. The idea that the Earth's geology, a lot of information can be derived from the different strata, the different layers. Now, this is common knowledge to us. It was revolutionary at the time.
Well, they didn't have the Grand Canyon, so,
Yeah.
Or that area in Montana where you can be like, old dinosaurs, new dinosaurs, ancient sea life.
And even though they knew that there were earthquakes and volcanoes, they didn't yet understand plate tectonics and the fact that the Earth's crust is...
That's actually really modern.
That's super recent.
just over a century ago. They
Exactly.
were still being like, what? You think the Earth's on a bunch of plates? That's ridiculous.
You're telling me
we're
hold on,
floating on magma?
hold on. You're telling me that this solid ground underneath me is actually just laid on top of islands of rock
And
that
I
move
can't
around?
take to China because there's liquid and it's super hot.
Indeed.
Nonsense.
I mean, listen, I wish that Journey to the Center of the Earth was true, but it's not.
We have a word for people like you.
There are several words for people like me.
Like you.
Heretic.
Most of whom we shouldn't. Am I anathema as well?
we're not going back to April Fools.
Not yet.
So Steno derived the four the fundamental laws of stratigraphy. The law of superposition, which is simply the idea that the oldest material is down lowest. Again, he's doing the foundational work. Whereas now we accept, well, duh. Newer stuff's on top, lower stuff is down below.
You know,
No, that seems
occasionally the
backwards.
plates cause things to make weird rifts, but you know, it's still, you can tell.
See, and even though they were long from discovering plate tectonics, his work pointed to this. Because he also derived the principle of original horizontality, which is that this stuff is distributed on a fairly even layer due to gravity. You know, it's going to push it all down. But yet, our clear evidence is that it's been shifted. So the fact that he established this principle and then our observational evidence is different pointed to something is making the Earth move. Eventually, we discovered plate tectonics. The principle of lateral continuity, which is this layer is going to be contiguous unless interrupted by something. Like, oh, look, here's a canyon. It's pretty grand. What should we call it?
I love all of the various scientific principles that basically state, look, everything's going to stay the same
Until they change.
unless it doesn't.
The first law of the conservation of motion.
Yeah.
And the principle of cross-cutting relationships, which means if something is cutting across something else, a river cutting through the stone to make the Grand Canyon, what cut through had to come after the original stuff.
That seems you know.
This seems reasonable and logical. I bet Descartes hated it.
Yep. Well, he probably was like, it probably doesn't even exist. I don't know if that guy's real. One day we'll do
Prove
just
to
an
me-
episode
yeah.
of Bashing Descartes. It'll be
Prove
great.
to me that Steenson guy is even real.
Then he throws something at him. And because he loved digging in the dirt, he also derived what is called Steenson's law,
Ooh.
or the first law of crystallography.
I feel like this is like geography you do with crystals. Is that all right?
Well, again, because he's digging around in the dirt where there are fossils that are fossilized and crystals and all kinds of things, he encountered a lot of crystals. And this is the law of constant angles, which means all of the materials of the same kind are going to have the same initial angle in how the crystals are formed. I don't understand crystals, but it's true.
It's kind of like when you make the rock candy thing. No matter, what sugar you start with, it looks about the same because sugar will crystallize in a set form.
Yep. Yeah. So, again.
Or
just-
salt if you're doing it for, school and they don't let you have sugar because you might lick it.
Yeah, because he's working back in the 1600. All of this is just really fundamental stuff. We've advanced considerably beyond that, but you have to have that basis before you can start any of it.
And because salt candy's just so much fun.
Salted candy is fine, but pure salt is not at all that good.
That's my point. Not
So-
at all that good.
Like, if he had just had the contributions in anatomy, great. If he just had the discovery that led to paleontology, that'd be impressive. Just the geology and crystallography stuff would be great. But this is all one dude.
So, does he go further?
I mean, we haven't heard how he got to the point of being from Lutheran to being blessed. So how did he go from being a Danish Lutheran to being a Catholic in Italy?
So he's already a pretty chill guy.
Or did he move down to Africa?
Now, he never, to the best of my knowledge, he never made it that far.
Okay.
But he's a pretty chill guy. He's he's a Lutheran living in Catholic France, living in extremely Catholic Italy, working for the Medicis, who provided several of our less good popes. But one day,
Everyone can't be a winner.
this is true. This is true. And like as the opposite principle, there's actually a Borgia who is a saint. So everyone can't be a loser.
The least bad Borgia.
The least bad Borgia.
No, he's the legitimately good Borgia.
Which is a very high amount of least bad.
The highest possible amount
If you
of
have
least
enough
bad.
least bad, you get to good.
Mm-hmm. So while he's working for the Medicis,
So I think it goes the other way around.
he travels down to Rome. He meets the Pope. He meets other really impressive people who are working in Italy. And he's already starting to think, these Catholics are pretty chill.
Except for Descartes.
Except for Descartes. But again, how Catholic is Descartes?
He was more a humanist.
Yeah.
So.
They don't, but they don't harass him on some of his scientific stuff as being heretical and blasphemous.
And they welcome questions about not only the faith but about the nature of the universe. So they're really open to all of his general inquisitiveness. I mean, again, he has achievements in all these fields. This is a guy who liked to ask questions. And then one day in 1667, he saw a procession for Corpus Christi, and he had a very profound experience, and he thought, I may have to rethink some things. He was received into the church later that year on All Souls Day of 1667. At this point, he largely switched from scientific inquiry to theological inquiry.
Well, he already did all the sciences.
I know, and I done all the science. What more is there to do?
I invented a science just to do stuff.
I did all the foundational works. I have to leave something for someone. He was ordained a priest in 1675. He was ordained a bishop in 1677 and sent back up north. He was officially the vicar apostolic to the Nordic missions, but he worked mostly in northern Germany. The Jesuits had done a lot of work trying to win people back to the faith, and he continued that, becoming eventually in 1680 the auxiliary bishop of Munster, which is just fun to say. Munster.
It's fun to say.
I mean,
now
yes,
I want
yes,
cheese.
Munster, but it's more fun to say Munster. I know. I was lazy. I didn't type
One of my
here.
favorite cheeses.
I believe it's a wash drawing.
Now, he continued to be called in on anatomical questions even as a bishop. And he continued to, he liked dissecting stuff. And he continued to work. But the most impressive thing about him is he really adopted apostolic poverty. Even though he was a bishop, he sold both his ring and his pectoral cross to give the money to the poor. He dressed in very shabby clothes. And 4 days of the week, he lived off nothing but bread and beer. And this is not like he was a party guy. We've established at the time water wasn't always safe. So, very low alcoholic beer was people's primary beverage.
I'm just saying, he's generally in what is now Germany. It totally makes sense.
Yeah. And he moved around a lot in Germany, trying to find where he could, his efforts would be well received, where he could find a little bit of patronage. Because of his extreme personal poverty and fasting, he was in a pretty bad way. And he eventually died on what we would call the 5th of December, 1686. Also known in Germany at the time as the 25th of November, 1686. So he wasn't quite 50 years old. Blessed Nicolas Steno. Again, his name is Niels Steensen, but you Latinize it, and then you Italianize, then you Englishize that, and it becomes Nicolas Steno.
I don't know. I like this idea of 4 days a week, beer and bread.
No.
Just saying, Pope Nate might,
No.
I like meat too much. And fruit. I really want to avoid the scurvy.
I mean, it's just pure carbs.
My morning banana.
That's true.
And we already established a guy who knew about the human body did this, and it made him die at 50.
How about beef and beer?
Isn't that what we do now?
All right. So
Blessed Nicolas Steno, showing that a huge brain and great inquisitiveness does not have to contradict with the somewhat reckless pursuit of piety.
No, it does not.
So, Blessed Nicolas,
pray for us.
Comment below with your favorite other Dane, your greatest Dane. Give this episode a like. Subscribe to our... No, it has to be a real Dane. No, cartoons don't count. Unless we lived in the world of Roger Rabbit. Which would be awesome and terrifying.
Yes.
Very.
So, subscribe to our channel. Ring the church bell to be notified the next time a pod is uploaded. Share this episode, especially with a young person who believes that there is a conflict between faith and science, which there's not.
Or thinks sharks are cool.
Because sharks are awesome.
Yeah.
Although
Or
not,
thinks
as cool,
dinosaurs
although
are
not as
cool.
cool as dinosaurs. I like Jimmy Akin's answer. Why did God make dinosaurs? Because they're awesome.
Yep.
And if there's any scientist you want us to cover, comment below and give us that suggestion.
Yep. And until next time, remember to live your faith.
Love your faith.
Share that love.